while I was at PFI, I also grabbed this nice snap-on multimeter that does have the continuity setting where it will beep when you touch the prongs together. You guys were saying my crappy one had the setting as well for continuity, and you're saying it was this arrow symbol right here with the red line surrounding it, and I set it to that, but it still didn't beep or nothing. It just showed weird numbers, and I don't know, I just don't really trust that multimeter. But we got the snap-on one right here, got the prong going into the number 3 injector power wire, and if I touch it right here on the harness, it beeps. So that's definitely the wire right there. And if I touch it to the other one, nothing happens. So that's a different cylinder that I pulled apart. But yeah, definitely the cause was that wire right there. Alright, so I got all my main studs into the new block, and I also got the main bearings on one half, and then I put the crank down on it, and then I also have plasti gauge underneath the crank, and I also put plasti gauge on top of the crank. Kind of hard to see with that reflection in the way. Right there you can see the little green piece of plasti gauge, and then I also got the new bearings into the main cap, and I'm going to put that on and tighten everything down and check the bearing clearances, make sure everything's good, and then I'll be able to pull everything back apart, re-clean off the crank, take all that plasti gauge off, and start assembling everything from there. I also need to gap my rings for the pistons, and then attach the new pistons to my previous connecting rods, or my old connecting rods. And once I get the rings on there, get the rods connected to the pistons, I can press everything into the block and start assembling everything. And I'm also not going to worry about plasti gauging the rod bearings. I am using the same crank just with new bearings, and I don't think it's really necessary to check that. But since I'm using a new crank in a new block or in a different block, I do want to double check the clearances for that. So I'm gonna get that main cap tightened down, and hopefully everything is in spec. So where I left off, I was checking the main bearing clearances between the main bearing and crankshaft with plasti gauge. And the first time I torqued everything down and then took it all apart, the clearances seemed a little tight. They were still like within Honda spec, but they were definitely on the tight side of things. A couple of them were like right around 10 thousandths, which is pretty tight, especially for being a performance engine. That's like, I'd say that's like really tight. And I torqued it down to 65 foot-pounds or like 62 foot-pounds, and I read online that the factory spec is 52, so I went like 10 extra foot-pounds just because I figured those were ARP mains and it wouldn't hurt. But the clearances were really tight, and then I wiped everything off, tried it again, but that time, the second time I only went to 55 foot-pounds, and that seemed to help a lot. They were all around like anywhere from 12 to 15 thousandths, maybe even a little looser than that. So it's still pretty tight, but I could live with that. And just to be sure, I did try some other bearings, and then those seemed even worse. They're actually still the plasti gauge on the crank from those ones, and they're like right around 10 thousandths of an inch too. I don't know if it'll focus, but this was with a different set of new bearings. So I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, that's like right at 10 thousandths. So those ones were even worse. So I'm just going to use the original ones I had and torque it down to 55 foot-pounds, and I'm just going to make sure I give this thing a good break-in and make sure those bearings get like seated properly. I think the very first time we ever did this to my car, the bearing clearances were right around 15 thousandths, and that's about what they are with the other bearings right now. So I can live with that. It's definitely kind of tight, but it should be all right. Also, the bearings on my wagon were about the same, and it's still running fine. So, and it has been a while since I did that. I've been doing the ring gaps. I'm on my last one right now. This is the top ring for the 3rd cylinder, and I'm doing the ring gaps to 20 thousandths on the top ring and 22 thousandths on the second. And then the oil rings, I just don't even check them, because I just put them in there just to make sure that they're not like abnormal. Just make sure there's still like a gap, and then I just put the oil rings on. But this is the last ring for the 3rd cylinder, and I just need to put this one on. And then all my pistons will be ready to go. I already got all the pistons on the rods with the little retaining clips on each side. Got all the piston rings measured out and ready to go. So once I put that last ring on, I'm going to start putting all the pistons into the cylinders, get a ring compressor, tap them all down in there, and then I'll flip the motor upside down and start assembling everything else. Put the bearings back in it, put some assembly lube on everything, and then start bolting everything down and torquing it all down. Then I'll have the bottom end pretty much all the way put together. So I'm gonna get to it right now. It's getting pretty late, but I would like to get these pistons in before I go to bed. And another thing I didn't mention is on the number 3 rod that had all the aluminum on it from the piston melting, I just took a wire wheel to it and cleaned all the aluminum off. It came right off, like with little to no effort. So for those of you worried about the rod, I have faith that it is completely fine. There was just some aluminum caked onto it, but wire wheel took it right off. So rod looks good as new. Alright, so I got pretty much everything all together. I got the main cap on there, got all the bearings put in there, got assembly lube on everything, got the main cap torqued down, got the rods torqued down, and the motor actually spins over pretty easy. I'm surprised how well it turns over for the clearances being pretty tight, but that might be a good sign. And I think this is as far as I'm going to get for tonight. I still have a couple other things I could do, like throw the oil pump back on and put the balance shafts back in, but I'm gonna wait on that till tomorrow. It is already pretty late and I can't do anything anyways until I get the head gasket in. So I'm just gonna wait till tomorrow, get up kind of early, try to get everything put together on the motor, and then maybe just set the block in the car, and then hopefully I'll have the head gasket on Monday and then get the hatch up and running again. But there's no need to rush it. I am plenty far for tonight. It's now the following day, and so far I have gotten the oil pump back on, I got the balance shafts in, I got the timing belt tensioner and some other little things on. I got the main seal on, and I think I showed yesterday torquing everything down. So right now I'm fixing to get the oil pan put on. I still need to put on this like scatter shield thing. This goes like that. That might be backwards, but that goes on there, and then I have to put the oil pickup on, and then I can throw the pan on, and then after I do that, I can take the motor off the stand, and then I'm gonna put the flywheel on, put the clutch back on, and then I'll be able to bolt the tranny back up to it and then put it in the car. There are a couple more things I do need to swap over, like this driver's side motor mount. I need to put my oil sandwich plate on, this thermostat housing that goes on the end of the water tube, and this alternator bracket. I can do that later. And then also I'll have to swap out all my head studs. But I'm gonna get this all the way put together, get the pan on, and then start putting the clutch and flywheel and all that stuff on, and then hopefully get it in the car by today. And then I'm just gonna have to wait till tomorrow once I get the head gasket, and then I'll be able to finish up the car and then take care of the wiring for the injectors and all that stuff. But for now, I'm gonna get this together and go from there. Well, I got the bottom end and the transmission back into the car. All the mounts are lined up, got bolts through everything. So that did take me a little bit of time. This mount over here was kind of being a pain, but I did eventually get it. So that's as far as I'm gonna be able to get for tonight. And hopefully tomorrow I will get the head gasket in and then possibly try to fire her up if I get that far. Before I do that, I still need to fix the harness, and then I also want to go take those injectors and get them flow tested to make sure that they are flowing like they should, make sure none of them got messed up. But yeah, and I know I did take a couple shortcuts, but if I end up having to pay the price for it later on, then that's my choice, guys. I know some of you guys were a little sketched out that I was reusing the rod that the piston melted onto, but I'm honestly really not worried about it. Everything seems straight on it. All the aluminum came right off with like little to no effort. So we'll see how she does. And yeah, like I said, if something does happen because I chose to go the cheap way, then that's on me. And you guys can learn from my mistakes, but we'll see how this build does. But that's gonna be it for tonight, guys. So thanks for watching.